Right. So today we are going to continue with the database. So last time we discussed the analysis and also how to model, given a scenario, how to model it, the requirement. So remember, when we are developing a software, we have to understand, right? So now we have done that for the data part, right? Understanding the data related things, what are the entities, what are the relationships, right? What are the attributes, what are the different type of attributes. We identify that attribute is a multivariate attribute, composite attribute, derived attribute. Then when it comes to relationships, we identified it's a one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many, or is that relationship unary, binary, ternary? Are there any associative attributes, right? Things like that. Now, once you understand those requirements, that is the requirements, the reality. Requirements means the reality of the how things are, what data we are interested, how this data is related. So that is a requirement. Now our task is now design a database, relational database that support the requirement. Okay, that support the requirement. So in order to do that, we have to understand the theory behind the relational databases. So there are some concepts. So just like in the analysis, we identified entities, attributes. So in database terminology, we use different terms. So therefore, one way we have to learn different set of words. At the same time, we have to understand how the relational database architecture works and what are the different concepts. And then there are some concepts related to database designing, like normalization, the concept of primary key, foreign key, integrity rules, right? So once we understand those things, we are in a position to convert that requirement into a design. So once you design it, we can use SQL language to transfer it to a database, and how to communicate with the database, either using command prompt or from other applications like Java application or Python application or web application. All the other applications communicate with the database that you have developed using SQL language. So that is the idea. Okay, so never lose the big picture, otherwise you will have to just rely on your memorizing. Okay, so now we have analyze, and we have the model. We have modeled the ER, right? ER model. So now we are into the designing. Once we learn the concept, we will be able to come up with another ER model. Another ER model. So this is analysis ER. This is design ER, which is somewhat different but related. So then we will be able to develop the database. Using a concept like SQL. And also, once we develop the database, other applications will be able to connect to the database, again using SQL. We create the database using SQL, tables, relationships, and other applications also connect to the database using SQL, like your Java or web application or Python application. Okay, so that is a big picture. So far we have covered only this part, right? So today we are into the second task. Okay, right? So I hope you are in with, you know what we are talking. Okay, right? So now, and also if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask question. There's nothing called, right, stupid questions. Okay, every question is valid question. It's only stupid silence. Of course, I am not saying that every person who is silent is stupid. Some people are genius because they are silent, because they don't have much of questions. But some people, they don't understand and they don't question it, right? So that is the bad thing. Okay, right? So you can either talk or you can use the chat. right? So designing. So as I told you before, coming up with the design, because design means it is a solution. It's the solution structure. So there can be bad solutions, good solutions, better solutions, right? So therefore, what we want to do is come up with the best solution if possible. The world is sort of we are in a competition. So whether we like it or not, right? Whether we like it or not, people will say no, competition is bad and blah blah blah. So we all in a competition. We want to come up with the best design, right? We want to come up with the best design so that rather than competitors, we come up with the best solution to our customers so that the customers are really happy to work with us. So that is the idea. Okay. So therefore, in order to come up with the best solution, we have to understand the concepts properly. So then we are in a position to come up with the best solution. Okay. So what are the concepts related to the design? So first of all, I will again explain, show you the very first day I explained you the 3T architecture, ANSI Spark 3T architecture. I hope now you can remember it. If not, you can again pick it. So we can understand the database or DBMSs using ANSI Spark. Right? American National Standard Institute came up with a database architecture. It's a layered architecture. You will be learning another layered architecture when you are doing networking. Okay, OSI architecture. So it's a layered architecture. It's a 3-layer architecture where we have 3 layers. The physical layer, I explained this in the very first day also, physical layer. If not, you can just say, no, you didn't explain it, right? Because I am human, I may also forget certain things. Then you can say, oh, no, you didn't explain it. So then I will explain it a little bit further. Okay, right. Physical layer, logical or conceptual layer, same thing. External or user layer. Another name for physical layer is internal layer. Okay, just give me 1 minute. Right. So physical or internal layer, logical or conceptual layer, external or user layer. Okay. So what are the concepts related to external layer? We'll start from there. External layer means, or the end user layer means how the users look at your database. Their view. These are sort of views. Right? So those are basically views. The different people look at it in a different level. So this is the view of the end user. End users means the operators, employees, customers, because sometimes customers directly use the application, right? So you go to the do online banking. So you are a customer and you are directly using the application. So end users view. So this is the developers view. Developers, designers view. And this is admin view, administrators view. And also the system developers, that is who are developing database systems like Oracle, MySQL. So that also has to be developed by someone else. So this is a very low level technical view. Okay, right. So end users view of the database is, right, so they look at the database as combination of forms, right, forms, screens, okay, dialog boxes, right, screens, dialog boxes, forms, and there's another concept called views, right? So they look at the database as combination of these 3: forms, screens, dialog boxes, and views, right? So when we say you have to look at the when the end user says I want to know about your employees, their salary, we will generate a report and give it to that person, or he will generate that. That is his view of the data, his report. Or maybe a data entry operator want to enter new students into the system details. So he will have a form Using the form, he will insert it, but actually it will be ended up in the database. So that is called end user view, right? Forms, reports, screens, right? Reports, etc. So in the logical or the conceptual view is the developer's view, and this is the most important for our discussion today. So they are in relational databases. Remember, we discussed different type of databases also. For relational databases, there are only two concepts. That is relations, or casually we call it table, and relationships. So basically in analysis, we call this entities. Right? Now we call it relations or tables, just a difference in name. Okay. So then in analysis also we call it relationships. Here also we call it relationships. So therefore these two are nothing new, right? So this is basically our entity will be considered as relations or tables. The relationships we just again here also designers call it relationships. Okay, right? So we will learn the concept related to relations and relationships and how to design a database using these two concepts. Okay. So then we have the third layer, the low level layer, right? Remember, if in the computer also we have the software, firmware, hardware. Hardware is the lowest. But in database, we don't go into hardware level. So they are all software. Right? Physical layer means how your data is actually saved, how your data is retrieved. So therefore, ultimately, for computer, everything is set of files. So therefore, we have data files and also index files. I briefly explained this last time on the very first day also. Okay, data files and index files. Right. So today, what we are going to discuss is this one. Right, relations and relationships. Okay, right. So let's take one by one and some concepts related to those. Right, relation or table. Right, relation or table represent an entity. Of course, yes, it's coming from analysis. So relation represent an entity. Like we may have a table or relation called student, course, payment, because we are interested in keeping payment information. We are interested in keeping student details. We are interested in keeping the course details. So that is called relation. So then what is relationship? That you already know, right? Relationship is connection between two or more relations, right? Say relation 1, relation 2. Now we say we have relationship between those two tables. Okay, right? So relationship and relation. Right. First, we are going to discuss concepts. Right. Concepts related to relations. Then we will be discussing concepts related to relationships. Then we will discuss how to design because we want to get the best design. Right. So that our product is the best product. Okay. Right. So therefore, first, in order to design, first we have to learn the concepts. So most of these concepts we are already familiar with, but we are just going to put it into the designer's point of view. Okay. This point of view. We are now coming from analysis to this one. Okay. Right. So table or relation. So every table or relation must have a name. Right. Otherwise, how can we uniquely identify in SQL query or whatever? Right. Employee, student, department, etc. Okay. So every relation must have a name, and that must be unique in the database. In a different database, you can have the same name, but within a database, otherwise, when I say payment, if there are two payment tables, we are in trouble. Okay. So then your relation have fields or columns. Now you can see we are using different name, but same concept. In analysis, we call them attributes, but in designing, we call them fields or columns. Okay, fields or columns. Then there's a special field or set of fields. We call it primary key. In analysis, we call it identifier or identifiers. But here we call it primary key. Every table must have primary key. There can't be any table without primary key. So then our design is really poor. It's going to have some troubles in the future. Okay. Right. So we have every table must have a name and set of fields, and there must be a special one more set of fields called primary key. Okay. So what else? What else the relations can have? So additionally, these relation can have some constraints. Right? Constraints. Actually, when we say constraints, mostly those constraints will be related to, again, fields. Right. So that's it. That's it. If you know these things, the relation part is over. Right. And also we are going to discuss few more concepts related to relations so that we can use those terms then and there. Okay. Right. So what are those concepts? So I hope you must have the note with you, and preferably you must read the note and attend the class. Okay. Right. So we call them the fields, right, or the columns, and these are called the data. Now data, we call them either records or rows or tuples. Okay. Yeah, so we'll come into that. Okay. Right. Yeah, we are going to discuss that because our main focus is actually primary keys. Right. So let's first look at the background and come back to that. Okay. Right. So now we have fields, and these are the data. Say if I have 10 students, there will be 10 records or 10 rows or 10 tuples. Same meaning. Okay. So different people use different names. So if you feel like, no, I'm out now, I can't understand this point onwards, so just you have to raise. Okay. Raise your say that, okay, no, I didn't get it. Right. So records, rows or tuples. So that is the data. So when you are adding a new record, now you have, say, earlier 5, now 6 records are there. Okay. Right. So when it comes to fields, the fields must have a name. Again, remember, tables must have a unique name. You can't have the same name for more than one table. And every field must have a unique name as well within the table. Now you can have the same name for 2 tables, right? For example, employee also you can have a field called name. Department also you can have a field called name. But within one table, you can't have the same field name for 2 columns or the 2 fields. Okay. Right. So these are the field names. And these are the tuples or the records. Okay. Right. So then there's another concept. When it comes to fields, right, every field must have a name. And it must be unique within the table. And there's another thing usually we specify when it comes to fields in designing, that is the data type. Right? Data type. So we have to specify whether it is a text, whether it is a number. If it is a number, is it a whole number or decimals are allowed? Right? Whether the decimals are allowed, whole numbers only, or is it a date? Okay, is it a date type? Right? So we have to specify. So we'll be discussing those things, the common data types. Actually, the real data types depends on the database, because different databases, right? For the MySQL, if you take MySQL and Access, slightly different data types will be there. But commonly, you don't have to specific to a data type. We will discuss some common data types. Okay. So every field must have a name, data type. Then fields can have constraints. Okay. So that is why I told you that the constraints of the table are mostly constraints to the field. Okay, constraint to the field. For example, I will say the width constraint. So the maximum width is say 20 or the minimum width is 5 if it is password or something. Or maybe I will say it must have this particular format if it is something like email. So those are constraints. Constraint means we restrict. We restrict. For example, when you go to school, you can't go with any cloth. There's a constraint saying you must come with school uniform. But when you go to the tuition class, you don't have that constraint, right? Right. So, for example, we may say not null constraint. Not null constraint means always you must provide a name value. Otherwise, we are not going to accept that record. Okay. Right. So we'll discuss those things later. So the name, data type, and maybe set of constraints are there. Okay. And we will pick one or more of the fields as primary key. Right, primary key. And that's it. That's it. Okay. Right. So few more concepts now we are going to discuss. The first concept is concepts related to relations or tables. Few more concepts. The first one is attribute domain of a field. So what is mean by attribute domain of a field? Possible valid values of a field is called attribute domain. So this is for a field. For example, say there's a field called, say, shirt size. Assume that this is for our database is for a particular shop. So then maybe the shirt size should be small, medium, large, and extra large. Assume they are having only those 4. So that is called the attribute domain of the field. Right? Attribute. Now, for example, if it is marks, and we know that typically marks are given 0 to 100. So you can't have marks 105. So that is the attribute domain. So attribute domain of the mark is 0 to 100. So it comes from your business area, domain. So that is why we call it domain. Domain means the business or the functional area. Okay. Okay, right. So the second concept is degree of a relation. So what is mean by degree of a relation? The degree of a relation is number of attributes in the table. For example, if you have 4 attributes or the 4 fields, we say the degree is 4. For example, this table, the degree is 4. Right? Degree is 4 because we have 4 fields. If you include another field, we say that the degree is 5. Okay. Right. So those are some simple concepts. So the next concept is cardinality of a relation. So cardinality of a relation is number of records in the table. So for example, this one, we have 3 records right now. So therefore cardinality of the relation is 3. If you insert another record, the cardinality is going to be 4. Okay, so those things are self-explanatory, right? I don't want to explain it further. So the next concept is the concept called null value. So in database terminology, if you don't give a name value to a field, maybe I have not given the number, or I have given on the, for that record, I have given last name, but not the first name. So then we say, we don't say that it's blank or empty. Right? So in database terminology, we say we have a null value. Right? We have null value for the field. Null is also a value. Okay, it doesn't have a data type. if someone asks what is the data type of null value, you have to say it's a null type. Okay, it's a concept, because in day-to-day life we don't use the word concept called null most of the time, right? We say nothing is there, maybe something like that, but it's also a value. So it is not textual value called null, no. So don't get a fool thinking that maybe you are saving it in the as a text null. No. So this is just to represent. But we use the concept called null. For example, we can write a SQL query saying where the number is null. Okay. Right. So then we have the field level constraints that I already explained you, right? The number, marks must be 0 to 100. If the shirt size must be those 4. It depends on our domain, right? It depends on our domain. Okay. The width, value ranges, the null constraint, whether null is allowed or not. Sometimes we have the unique constraint where, for example, if it's student's email address, so you can't have the same email for 2 people. Okay. So then we say that the email address must be unique. And when you are inserting the record, if that record has an email address which is already specified by another record, the database is going to trace an error. Okay, unique constraint. And there can be any other domain constraint. Any other domain constraint coming from the business rules. For example, maybe we have a field called discount. Maybe that particular business has a policy saying discount must be less than 50%. So then that is also constraint. That constraint again comes from the domain. Okay. Right. Now we are moving to the concept of key. Okay, key. So when it comes to keys, there are 2 types of keys mainly. What are those 2 types of keys? Primary key, foreign key. Right? Primary key, foreign key. So foreign keys we are not going to discuss right now because it's something to do with the relationships. Still we are in the relations. Okay, we are in the relations, so tables. So therefore we are not going to discuss foreign keys here, but that is also key. Right? That is also key. Right, so we are going to discuss those things. Right, we are going to discuss those things practically using a database. Right, after discussing primary keys, because once we discuss the primary key only, we can do a hands-on database related things. Okay, right, we are going to discuss that. Don't worry. Right. So when it comes to now, we are going to discuss foreign keys later. Okay, because it's something to do with the relationships. So let's discuss about the primary keys. Now, when it comes to primary key, there are so many related words. So many related words. About 4 or 5 related words are there. Okay, about 4 or 5 related words are there. What are those words that you are supposed to know? Okay, related to primary key. So there's a term called candidate key. Candidate key. There's a term called super key. Okay, so then we have the concept called primary key, and then we have another word related to primary key. If you have done database topic in your school or whatever, can someone tell me what is the remaining word related to primary key? Super key, candidate key, primary key. What is the other words that comes to your mind other than foreign key? Foreign key is completely different concept. Anyone? Anyone? So the other term is alternative key. Alternate key. Okay, Right. So you must know the meaning of all four words. All four words. Right. So the first of all, you must know why do you need a primary key? Why? So then what? Then the concept related to these things and any other concept related to primary keys and how to pick the what are the different types of primary keys, how do you pick the best primary key, etc. Right. So why do we need primary key? Can anyone tell me quickly? Can anyone tell me? Because then it increases your confidence. Right. So whenever you answer a question, it increases your confidence.
To find a record.
To find a record, yes. Right. To find a record, if I make it little bit perfect, right? To find a record, unique record. To find a unique record, right? So we can use primary key because to find a record, you can use any other field as well. You can use someone's phone number to find a record. You can use someone's email address to find a record, right? You may use someone's marks to find a record, but primary key can be used to unique record. Okay, so we must have at least one field in the table which can be used to uniquely locate a record. So that is called the primary key. Right? For example, when it comes to your O-level exams, that primary key was your examination number or index number. In your school, you have a student number, right? If you go to the supermarket, every bill has a bill number. It's a primary key, unique number. If you have bank account, your account number, no two person have the same account number, bank account. So in order to uniquely identify a record, we can use primary key. Right? So now remember, so when 10 people are there, if the same question is asked from 10 people, that is what happens in interviews. Right? So they will ask maybe 20 people to come to the interview and they will pick only one or two. So you must be that person. You must be that person. Okay. That must be your ultimate objective. Okay. Not the unpicked person. So when all other 9 say it is used to identify a record, if you go and say it is used to uniquely identify a record, so obviously, so you are the one that is going to be their pick, right? So that seriousness you must have. Okay. Gradually build that seriousness. Because in the exams, you know that not everyone is getting A, right? So the majority get C and S, majority, and minority get B and A and other side F. So try to be in that not the majority, try to be in that, right? Who are getting B's and A's. Okay, right. So what is the reason of primary key? We can use that primary key to uniquely identify a record. Okay, then we have different concepts related to primary keys. Right. So I will start with candidate key. So remember what we are interested is a field or set of fields that can be used to uniquely identify records. So there can be more than one such possible fields. One might say, okay, we can use, say, student table, we can use student ID. Again, someone will say, we can use email because students usually don't have the same email by two people. Another person will say, okay, if it is something like higher studies, we'll use NIC number, ID number. Right? So likewise, there can be different possibilities. So then we call them candidate keys. Candidate means when there's election, different candidates contest, right? For example, last presidential election, few candidates contested, but only one is picked. So these are the candidate keys because they have that qualification. They can be used to uniquely identify a record because they are qualified. But in a table, you don't need multiple primary keys. What you need is one. So therefore, what we do is we pick the best that we think as the primary key. So here primary does not, now a lot of people think primary means are ප්‍රාථමික කියලා. සමහරව කියන්නේ මේකට ප්‍රාථමික අතුරු කියලා. හරි. හරි. එහෙම කියන අයට primary key කියන්නේ මොනවද කියලා තේරෙලා නැහැ. එහෙම කියනවා හරි කියනවා නම් කවුරු හරි. මේක ප්‍රාථමික නෙමෙයි ආ. ප්‍රාථමික කියන්නේ මේ දුර්වල නේද? ඒ කියන්නේ ප්‍රාථමික අංශය කියන්නේ ප්‍රාථමික අංශයේ ඉන්න චූටි බබාලා ටික. ඒගොල්ලන්ට තනියෙන් টয়ලට් යන්නවත් බෑ. නෑ primary key කියන්නේ ප්‍රාථමික අතුර නෙමෙයි. හරි. මූලික ප්‍රධාන අතුර. ප්‍රධාන primary has two meanings. One meaning is basic. The second meaning is main. So here the primary key means main key. Out of these, the picked key is the primary key because that is the key that we are going to use. Actually, we are not going to use the others. They are just the candidates. Right? It's like the president, right? So now 3-4 people contested, but others are not, they don't have anything. They are just now citizens. So once you pick, it will be the primary key, say student ID, and other unpicked ones, right? So they have no privilege now. So we call them alternate keys, alternative keys. So these are alternative keys. The picked one is primary key. Okay. But all those are candidate keys, right? All those are candidate keys. So once you pick a particular key, field or combination of fields, that is the primary key. So then someone will ask, how do you pick? So usually you pick the strongest one. Strongest one means definitely it must be unique. There must not be any possibility of duplications. So there's a possibility of duplication for email. For example, say it's a kid. Maybe there are two brothers or sisters or whatever from the same family. Maybe they both are using their father's email address. So that possibility is there. That possibility is there. So therefore, this is not a very good candidate. And the other thing is make sure that it is always there. Because we are going to use it to uniquely identify. Maybe someone will say, I can't remember my NIC. I don't have NIC because I am under, say, 17 years. So therefore, this is also not a very strong candidate. But when I say student ID, you know that if you go to school, every student has a student ID. If it is employee, every employee has employee ID. If it is a banking account, every account has an account number. So those are the very strong candidates. So we pick that kind of naturally strong candidate as a primary key. It comes with the experience and other things. Okay, right. So then the other candidates are all alternative keys. Alternative keys. Actually, though we call it alternative views, actually they don't have any privilege. Just like those who contested and defeated. Okay, so they are just fields. But if you want, you can apply. Not if you want. Usually what we do is, this is considered as a primary key, but we will be applying the unique constraint to these fields because we know that they are also fairly unique, at least fairly unique. So that is why we have the other constraints. So we will be assigning the unique constraint to those alternative keys. Okay. So then what is mean by super key? So then our discussion is over about the primary keys. It's not over. We have to discuss one more concept actually. Right. So super key. So super key is your candidate key plus something else. For example, email is a candidate key. Student ID is before picking candidate key. But if you take something like student ID and email, both, so that is a super key because it has the possible candidate key and something else also. Actually, here we have two possible candidate keys. So basically, primary key is the minimal candidate or super key. Minimal super key. It must be the minimal. So when a one field can represent a primary key, why do you need two fields? So the primary key must be minimal. But super key may have the primary key or the candidate key, but it may be having more than that. Another possibility is maybe email and name. So email is the candidate key, but now email and name. So therefore it is super key. But if you take something like first name, comma, last name, that is not a super key because none of these are candidate keys. None of these are candidate keys. You must have a candidate key inside that and something else, or more, maybe two candidate keys to make it a super key. But if all the fields are not related to the candidate keys, that is not a super key. For example, date of birth is not a super key. Name and date of birth is not a super key. But maybe student ID and date of birth is super key because that student ID is there. Okay, right. So now we have discussed about super key, candidate key, primary key, and alternative keys. Okay. So next we are going to now categorizing the primary keys. Right, categorizing the primary keys. So there are two types of categories. One categorization is simple key, simple primary key versus composite primary key. Okay, simple primary key means that key, the picked primary key has only one field, single field or atomic. So that means it has one field only. Maybe student ID. Just one field is a primary key. Maybe NIC, bill number, right? Student index number. So those are all simple primary key, right? Bank account number. But there are situations we have to go for combinations of fields as the primary key. So this combination is the primary key. So then we say we have composite primary key. Composite primary key. So we will encounter composite primary keys, especially when we are designing many-to-many relationships. Because we will be adding a connecting table and you will find that we have to come up with a composite primary key there. Okay, so we'll be discussing that later when we face that kind of situations. But you must know that there are two types of primary keys, simple primary key and composite primary key. Okay, so simple primary key is single field, composite primary key is the primary key has more than one field. So then someone will ask, why do you need primary key as more than one field? Because you can't find a single field. If you can find a single field, you will never go for composite primary keys. Okay, if you can't, then we'll say, okay, then at least let's take this combination as the primary key. Then that is fine. Okay. Any questions? Right. So this is another classification of primary keys. So the second classification is domain primary key versus surrogated key, surrogated primary key. So what is that? So domain primary key means the business has some meaning for that key. So they use it for their business activities. So then we call it domain primary key. So it has a domain meaning. Domain means the business area. Domain meaning, having a domain meaning, having some sort of a meaning for the business or the domain. Surrogated primary key means no domain meaning. It's only used to locate unique field. Okay. So typically surrogated primary keys are machine generated. Right? Machine or database generated or DBMS generated values. Okay. For example, the bill number. Most of the time, the bill number is just the next number, next number, next number, next number. Account numbers are also like in accounts. Okay. But there can be some meanings for your account number as well. Some meanings like the branch number part, maybe the account type will determine another number part of the number, and then they are not surrogated. They are domain. And you all know that, I don't know exactly how the new NIC format, the old NIC format, right? Something like, so this is your date of the year. If it is 1980, you born in 1980, it will be starting at 80. So then there's another part, right, which can be used to calculate your date of birth. Then you can use it to see whether you are male or female also. So that means your NIC number has so many meanings, your gender, your date of birth, basically. So therefore, that is not a surrogated key. It's something using a logic, people build it. Okay, so those are also domain keys. But surrogated key means it's just the next number generated by your computer or any other program, or usually DBMS. Okay. So these are typically auto numbers. Of course, we can use that number for other purposes, but it has no other meaning. It's generated by the system. Right, now we are done with the concept called primary key. Okay, concept of primary key. Any questions? Right, so now we are going to do a bit of practical thing. First, in your syllabus, they have asked to use MySQL. But at the beginning, I'm not going for the MySQL. Rather, I'm going to use Access. So I hope you all have Access with you. So you have to do this as a practical things, right? So you know ICT is a practical subject, okay? Right. So therefore, first we are going to use Access. I don't mind what Access version you are having, Microsoft Access version. I don't mind. So any version you should be able to do this. Okay, any version. Okay. So I'm going to start my Access. If you have 2000 or 2010, no, I don't mind. Any version you should be able to do this. Okay. Right. So start your Access. Then we will move into MySQL. Start your Access. Okay, and create a blank database. So you will get something like this. Okay. Right. So composite primary key means, since we don't have a single field cannot be used to uniquely identify. We have to add another field. So then we call it composite primary key, because both the fields are needed to uniquely identify. So then it is still a primary key, and it is a composite primary key. Super key means when one field is good enough to uniquely identify, you add another field, and then if you look at both the fields, or both the 3 or 4 of the fields as a combination, then we say super key. Right? So super key is not a minimal key. Right? Super key is not a minimal key. Right? I hope you got it. Okay. Right. So now we have the. Okay. So now we have. So they have already created a table for you. Okay. So you have to do it practically. So the first table they have already created, table or the relation. So but still they have not saved the table. So therefore just click on the save button. Click on the save button, and it will ask what is the name they want for the table. So let's call it. Okay, let's call it student. Okay, student. I will use capital S here. Okay, so you can use whatever the convention we want, but stick to a convention. Okay, right. So now I have a table called student. Remember, table must have a unique name. So therefore I gave it the name student, because this is the first table. It's not going to be conflicting with anything else in this database. Now you can right click on that and go for design view. Right, design view, where you can specify what are the fields. Right? What are the fields? So since this is student table, I will say the first field as student ID. Right? Student ID. And you can see that by default, the first field, they have taken it as a primary key. You can see there's a key sign. So that means they have picked it as a primary key. At any time, you can change it. But I don't mind because I'm going to use this as a primary key, student ID, because that is very good candidate. And here the data type, they have already picked it as auto number. I told you if it is auto number, that is surrogated primary key, right? That is a surrogated primary key. That means your Microsoft Access is going to generate the number. You don't have to specify. And I'm happy with that. Or maybe I will say, no, don't do it. I will give the student number. Okay. So then I will just say something like a number. Right? Something like a number. Right. So now if you want to specify any constraints, I told you the third concept is constraint, right? The width, any ranges and things like that, you can specify here. Right. So now you can see the theory and the practice is the same. It is not theory is something when it comes to practice, there's something else. No, then it is that education is a failure, right? Right. So now I'm not going to do any constraints here because it has already picked it as a primary key. Right. Now I'm going to say something like name. Right. Name is unfortunately keyword in Microsoft Access. Right. Keyword. It has a meaning. So therefore we can't use that name. For a field name, you can't give the name as the name. So therefore I will just give it a different name. So otherwise I'm getting errors. I will just say S name. Okay. That is to prevent that error. That happens only in Access, not in MySQL. Okay. And it has suggested short text. Okay. So there are something like short text, long text, etc. So I will just use short text in Access. Okay. Right. So then I need another field. Let's say email. Okay, email. I'm just adding some fields. So for that also, I'm okay with short text. I'm okay with short text. Okay. So that's all I need because I don't need anything else. Okay. I don't need anything else. Maybe date of birth. Okay. Let's add date of birth, DOB. I will just call it DOB. Otherwise it's lengthy. Then we have a data type called date time. I will go for date time. Now my first table is ready. I have primary key also. If you want to change the primary key, just click on this area and say right click and say primary key. Now the primary key is S name, but student name is not a good thing. Therefore I'm changing back to the student ID, and it is not a surrogated door number. It's something I have to provide, but it's a number in my case. Okay. Right. So then I'm done. Okay. Now, if you want any constraints, you can specify here. For example, I can say email. So I can say, for example, what must be the length. So I can say it must be up to this length. So then if it is 10, more than 10 will not be considered. Right? Something like that. So there are a few things. You don't have to memorize those things. Okay. Because I'm using Access to get you familiar with the concept. Right. Now I'm done. Right. So if you want, you can again save it. Now you can right click and say open. You have to do it with me parallelly. If you need more time, you have to ask. Okay. I will say open. Earlier I was in the design view. Now I'm going to the data view. Okay. Now let's add few data. Say student ID. I'm going to say 1. Say Nimal. Say Nimal at gmail.com. And date of birth, you can click on this calendar icon and just add a number. Okay. Maybe I just want another one. I will call it 2. Say Kapila. Say Kapila add. You can add whatever you want. And some date of birth you want. Okay, I'm just setting some random. Okay, so those are the tuples or the records. Okay, tuples or records. And you can see now I have 4 fields and 2 records. Okay, and I have primary key also. Primary key also. Okay. Right. Any questions? Because now we are done with the tables. Of course, we use a simple primary key, single field primary key, and also it is a domain or not a surrogated primary key, because otherwise I will go for surrogated primary key. I took it because there may be some meaning for that later. Maybe I will be using batch number, year. For example, say I am going to use something like 2022, say 01 or 001. Maybe this one 2022 002. 2022. So maybe that is the reason I want to make it. Otherwise, if it is 123, I could have gone for a surrogated key, the machine generated auto number. Right now, it has some meaning. Right, your student ID has a meaning. You can look at the student ID and say this student is the 2022 batch first registered student. This is the second registered student. That means it has some meaning. Right, it is not a surrogated key. Right, so any questions? Right, now we are moving to the relationships. Right, relationships. Right, so we discussed now. You have to go to the note before the class, ideally, and after the class as the second thing. And if there are questions, you can ask those things in the today itself to the WhatsApp group. So that is the culture we expect from you. You can see, look, there are so many students chatting with me, right? So they are in different classes, right? So usually I answer every single student, of course, not while I'm having the classes. Very rarely I miss 2 answers, right? Those who are chatting with me know, right? So I will very rarely miss a particular chat because that is part of my responsibility, right? So this is how the online education goes. We are 24 hours, 365 helping you. It is not that 2 hours only, right? And forget about it until the next time. No, right? So these things we discuss now, the composite primary keys, the business key versus surrogated key. Right now we are into the relationships. Now you can see almost half of the designing part is over. Right, relationship. First of all, you must know what is a relationship. Otherwise, you don't know what you are doing neither. If you don't know what is a relationship and you do all the crazy things about relationships, so you must be crazy. Right? So therefore, first thing is ask what? Right? What is a relationship? Relationship is a logical connection between entities or the relations or the tables. Logical connection. So that means they are related. This one is related to this one. Right? This one is related to this one. So therefore we say there's a relationship. And in analysis, we just draw it like this. But in designing, we just show it like this. You don't have to draw like that. Okay. For example, you are related to your mother. Right? You are related to your school because you are the student of that school. But maybe you are not related to a particular company yet because you are not employed. But maybe your father or mother is related to a particular business organization. Right? Right. So relationship is a connection between relations or entities. Okay. Right. So we want to now in the business world, in the real world, if there are relationships, so we must be able to represent that in the database also. Right. So that is why if you give your O-level index number to the examination department, they can tell you the results. Maths, this, English, science, blah, blah, blah. Why? They are not in the same table. Your details are in one table, the student table. It doesn't have your O-level results. It has just your email address, your ID, your name, maybe the gender, date of birth, maybe just that. Your results are in a different table, right? But your student table is related to that table. Therefore, there's a relationship. Using that relationship, actually, they are telling your results. Okay, right? I hope you know what is relationship, and if someone asks what is relationship, you must be able to explain it with a lot of confidence. Okay, right? So then, how? Okay, then of course, why relationship? Because in real world also these entities are related, right? So this is Nimal's results. These are the students of this particular course. So therefore, we have that concept in real world. So therefore, we need it in the database. And what logical connection between relations or the tables or the entities. Then we are moving to the how. So then your task is over, right? Why, what, how? Then study karna kya. So that is what is being study. Nothing else, right? So if someone asks how to create relationships, you must have very straightforward answer. Right? Very straightforward answer. Whether you are in Sri Lanka or USA or Australia or whatever, if someone asks how to create relationship, your answer must be what? We create a relationship using foreign keys. Right? So we use relationships using foreign keys. That's it. Oh, okay. So then someone will ask, what is a foreign key? Because that's a new word. And then you can explain what is a foreign key, or you can explain how without using the foreign key by combining this one also to here. Then you are not using the word foreign key, you are explaining foreign key also to your definition. Okay, how? Right. So what is a foreign key? So if someone asks why foreign key, now you have answer. Why foreign key? Because foreign keys are used to create relationships or denote relationships. So therefore, now all do you know why? Right? Foreign keys are there. So why primary keys? To uniquely identify a record in a table. Why foreign keys? To create relationships. Right? So then you must know what is a foreign key. So why what? So anyone who has done database part in your school or whatever, do you have that confidence? Or at least you have read the note? Right. So foreign key is a field in a table, field or column in a table, which is mapped to the related table, right? Which is mapped to the related table. That's it. To create the relationship, that's it. Whether someone asks what is foreign key in Sri Lanka or America or Alaska, this is my answer. Field in a table which is mapped to the related table, thereby creating a relationship is called foreign key. Right? If I want to be more specific, I will say which is mapped to the primary key of the related table. So that make it even more specific, because I told you that you will also have that kind of a day. Right? So you can get job two ways. You can get jobs in two ways. I have used only this way. I have never used the first way. So the second way is I have never used the first way. I'm very proud of that. I have never used the first way. So Now, in the schools, they try to make proud in yourself, right? You must be proud of this school, you must be proud of this country, you must be proud of this nation. Right? You must be proud of your religion. Those are all bullshit. Those are all bullshit. Right? Those are all garbage. So you must be proud of doing the right things, not doing any wrong thing. That's it. So this is the wrong way of getting a job. This is the right way of getting the job. So what is the right way of getting a job? You apply, you see that there's a vacancy, then you apply for the job, you send your CV, assume they ask you for the interview, you go there from the front door, you face the interview, maybe they will ask you for the second interview, maybe they will ask for the third interview, you get the job. So that is what you must be proud of. You must be proud of. Right. So you can do it in any country. You can go to UK and do the same thing. You can go to Australia and do the same thing. So there are such kind of people. The wrong way or the shameful way is shameful way. So you ask your father or mother, can you go ask that uncle, or can you ask that person, your neighbor, to get me a job, maybe the government job or maybe a private job, because I'm a stupid person, because I'm a low confident person, I'm a miserable person, so therefore I need your help. Favorism. So that is the shameful way, right? So you must try to be in this category, right? This category. Or you go and by force get jobs. You may have seen, right? People go into the government offices, right? But yakada වැටවල් පෙරලගෙන දීපියව කිය ගන්න. So කාලා කන්නේ හැත්ත නේද? So you must be in this category. So if you want to be in this category, when someone asks foreign key, give something like this: a field in a table which is mapped to the primary key of the related table, thereby creating a relationship. That's it. That's it. I'm not saying that you are supposed to get the job in the very first interview. Maybe you try another one. Maybe something less. They are giving little bit less money because I am not good enough. There are better people, therefore they have picked those to get that 2 lakh salary job. Maybe I will apply for 1.5 salary job because I am not good enough for that job. So that is how the cultured people do. Right. So now you know what is foreign keys. Foreign key is a field in a table which is mapped to the primary key of the related table. Right. So that is called foreign key. Right. That is called foreign key. Why we create foreign keys? That is how we create the relationship. That is why your student details or candidate details are related to the result details. Right. So let's create a relationship then. Let's create a relationship in our database. Right. Now we have student table. Right. Now we have student table. So let's have another table called, okay, say assume students have let's say something like assignments. Okay, students have to do assignments. One assignment is done by one student. Okay, and student have to do many assignments. Let's assume, right? Let's assume it's it's not a subject wise thing. We are not tracking subjects or whatever. We are just tracking the students and their assignments and things like that only. Okay, so let's create a table. So I'm going to say file, sorry, create table. Now it has created a table. I will save it. Then it will ask the name. I will say assignment. Right. So then I will go over the design view, right, of the assignment table. Right. I will call this assignment ID. Right. Assignment ID. I will go for number. Right? I will call the assignment as a name. I will call it a name because name is reserved. I will go for short text. Right? Maybe the marks for that particular assignment. Okay, marks for that particular assignment. Or maybe I will just call it assignment date. Date or submitted date. Submitted date. Okay, let's say marks. Okay, let's say marks. But this is not a very good design. Okay, this is not a very good design, but I will just use it for the time being. Okay, I will call it number. Right. So now I have the table and my assignment ID is the primary key. Now I need to create a relationship. What is the relationship? Student can submit many assignments. One assignment is for one student. So then I have to, what is the foreign key? Field in a table which is mapped to the primary key of the related table. So therefore, first I'm going to introduce a field to this table. Okay. So that depends on the software. Some databases does not allow it, some databases allow it. But usually we don't use spaces because some databases does not allow it. Therefore, either we use underscore or we use camel case. That is, I am using actually camel case. You can see A capital, I capital. Every subsequent words I am starting with capital. So those are the two conventions usually people use. Either they use underscore or they go for camel case. We don't go for spaces because some databases does not allow. Okay. Right. Now we need to create a relationship. So remember look at the definition of foreign key, because we use foreign keys to create relationships. A foreign key is a field in a table which is mapped to the primary key of the related table. So therefore, I am going to introduce the foreign key to this table, right? So I will give the same. Sorry, I'm going to introduce the foreign key to the assignment table. Right? Assignment table. I will explain how do you decide whether the foreign key must be added to the X table or Y table. So those are the important things that you must know, right? You can't just randomly decide, okay, I will go for the left table or right, then it is not engineering. Right? It is not engineering, right? You don't do random things in engineers, scientific people, they don't do random things. They don't do anything that has no meaning, no justification, logical justification. Okay, so that is another terrible thing that has happened to your that has happened to your life. You are doing so many things which cannot be justified logically. So maybe today also you have done that kind of things, but I never do that kind of things, right? I never do. That is why I have a lot of free times, because I don't do any of those bullshit, right? Illogical things that waste my time. Right. So now I am going to introduce the foreign key here. You can use any name, right? But I am going to use the same name as this one so that it's very easy to identify. That is again not a rule, convention database designers do, right? So therefore, I am going to make this map to the primary key of this table. So therefore, I am going to call this field also student ID. Again, it is not a rule, right? But good conventions make our life easier. So therefore, we'll use, okay, right? Because I'm going to map it to the primary key, which is a number. Make sure you make it number also. Okay, make this also number. Otherwise, you will be having issues, because we are going to map this to this field. So therefore, I make the same type, but there's no rule saying it must be same name, but I just gave it same name as well. Okay, so that it's very easily identified that this is the foreign key. Okay, right now, still it is not the foreign key. Just because the name is the same, your database doesn't know whether it's a foreign key or not, right? Because it doesn't go by the names. So therefore, now we have to in access, you have to close the tables, because you will be getting errors otherwise. Make sure you close the tables. Now I have the assignment table which has the foreign key. Still it is not a foreign key, just a column only yet. Once you map it to the primary key of the related table only, it will be foreign key. If you remember the definition, just because you have a field, it doesn't mean that it's a foreign key. And of course, the student table has the student ID, primary key, and other things. Here also we have the primary key assignment table, but I have added a field, but still I have not made this foreign keys. Therefore, it is those two tables are not yet related. Now let's make it relationship. So when you are creating relationship, make sure you close your tables. Otherwise, you will not be able to save that relationship. Okay, in Access. Right now, go to the database tools. I'm doing this slowly because I know some areas where students memorize without understanding. This is one area. Okay, so don't fall into that category. Right, go to the database tools, and there's something called relationships. Right, so then you get another window, but nothing is there. Right, so then you can right click and say show tables. So here you have that tables. Okay, I will right click and say show tables. In my case, it is here. In your case, it will be sometimes it will be pop-up window. Don't worry. So in my case, it is here because I have the latest access. If your one is little bit older one, you will get a pop-up window. From there, you can drag and drop it from that window to that. But drop it only once. I am also drag and drop, but from here, I am going to drag assignment and drop it here. Student, drag and drop. But don't drop twice. If you accidentally drop twice, just close the window without saving and come back. Okay. Right. Now I have the student table and assigned table. I will take student table here. Now I am going to create the relationship. How do you create the relationship? Using foreign keys. What is a foreign key? A field in a table which is mapped to the primary key of the related table. So now look at what I'm doing. So this is my foreign key. This is I'm going to make my foreign key, the student ID. So therefore I click on this primary key. I just click. I have not released it. Then I'm dragging it and putting it to the on top of the field that I have added in the assignment table. That is the student ID. So I just drag it. Now I am releasing my key, right? My mouse key. Now I got a pop-up window. It says here the student ID, from here also the student ID because I have the same name, and it says is it one to many. Okay, I'm happy with all those things. Don't change anything, but click on the enforced referential integrity, right, that we will be discussing later, and click on the enforced referential integrity. Make sure both are student ID, and just click on the create. Okay, and you will see there's a line between that, and in Access the many is represented by this infinity sign, many, but in your exam, we will be representing it using n. Don't worry, Access represent rather than n, they use the infinity sign. So that is a one-to-many relationship. Student can have many assignments. Assignment belong to one student. One assignment belong to one student. Okay. Right now the relationship has been created. How? Using a foreign key. You can see this is a field in the table which has mapped to the primary key of the related table. Okay, right. That is how you make it in Access. But in MySQL, we will be using SQL to create that. Okay, so but let's do it in this easy way first. Right now, I'm going to close this. If there's something to say with it will ask, I will say yes. Okay, now I have two tables and one relationship. Okay, so we have some data for the student, but not for the assignment. Okay, so let's add some data for the assignment. Okay, I will say this one as assignment, say something like, I can't use characters because it's a number. Okay, so I will say 2022. Sorry, I will just call it 1. Okay, assignment 1. So assignment name, I will say AS1, marks, let's say 70. Say student ID, I have to now give a valid student ID, or I have to keep it none. Okay, either you can save like that and save it, right? No error, Or else, if you are giving a student ID, it must be a valid student ID. For example, say this is a valid student ID 2000. In my case, 2022-002. I will give that as the student ID. Right. Now save and see, I don't get any error. It is accepted. But if I make it 2022-003, and if I try to save it, I am getting error. It says you cannot add or change a record because a related record is required. There's no related student record like that. Okay, so that is another constraint. I told you there are some other constraints. So that is another constraint. We call that referential integrity constraint. We'll be discussing that later. So I'm always showing you the practical things, right? I'm not telling anything without showing how to, what is it. Right? So I just make it again 2002 so that I can save it. Right, now let's add another assignment. Say 2, say AS2. Let's say marks is 90. Let's assume that is also for the same student. Okay, so let's say 2022-002, because one student can have many assignments. Let's have another one, 3. I will call it assignment as AS3. Let's call the marks as 60, and let's give it to 2022-001 student. Okay. Let's make it AS. Now you can see this student has 2 assignments and this student has only 1 assignment. That means student can have many assignments, but always one particular assignment is belong to one student. So this particular assignment 2 is for this student, assignment 3 is for this student, but one student can have many assignments. Okay, and anyway, we discuss those things also, but now you know how to create a relationship. Okay, how to create a relationship. Okay, right. Now we have 2 tables and 1 relationship, or 2 relations and a relationship. Okay. Now, so far we have been working on which tier? We have been working on this particular layer, right? Logical layer. Tables, we are creating tables, we are creating relationships. Okay, so we are not interested in this layer because that is handled by your database software. So it will create those data files, index files, and other things in the background. You don't have to worry about that, unless you are a database administrator. So then you have to look at that. Okay, so in your A-level ICT syllabus, we are not much interested in this area. But if you go for degree level, you will be learning how to work with these things as well, so that optimize backup, security, and other things. Okay, right. Now, before moving to the details about relationships, let's create some end user or the external view things and present this to the users, because users will not like to work with tables like this. So users will say, we don't like to enter data like this, right? So can you give me a form? Can you give me the data as a report? Okay, so therefore let's that is why I use the Microsoft Access, so that you can generate the database. The tool itself can generate those UI. That is why I just pick this one, right? So now just select student here and go to create and select form, not form design or whatever, right? Okay, just give me 1 minute. Just give me 1 minute. Hello. Kian? Hari. Right, sorry about that. Okay, right. So now we are going to create some forms, because they need forms, reports, and other things, right? So therefore, I'm going to select this and I'm going to select form, not the form design or anything, just the form. Just select the table properly, student table, and click on the form, and it has generated a form for that. And make sure you save it, and you can give the same name because it is saved as a form, not as a table. Okay, that is a student form. And make sure you close it, otherwise you will not be able to enter data. Then let's create a form for the assignment as well. Select the assignment and say create form. Okay, create form and save it, assignment form, and close it. Right, now we can even close these tables. Now I am going to look at the student form. Now you can see this is student 2022-001 nimal@gmail.com. Date of birth is this one, and you can see that Nimal has one assignment, that is assignment 3, A is 3, and he has got 60. So that is what end users are interested. So they are really happy to see data like this. So we are here to present them, give them that convenience by doing proper designing and other things, so that we can even generate the forms. Okay, now if you want to go to the next record, you can just click on the next record here. You can see that. So there is the next one. Sorry, you have to go to this one's next one. Right, so you have to click on here. Okay, right, so this is the next student 2022-002 Kapila@gmail.com, and that Kapila has 2 assignments submitted. A is 1 assignment and A is 2 design assignment, and he has got 70 and 90. So that is what they want, right? And let's open the assignment form. It's very simple form because it's just have the assignment ID, assignment name, marks, and student ID, right? Maybe next one, next one, next one, etc. And if you want, you can insert a new record from here also and save it. If you save it, then it will go to the table, right? For example, let's go to the student. I'm going to say new. This is the new one, new record. I will say 2022 003. Say Raju. Say Raju @gmail.com and some date. I'm just adding wrong dates. Okay, I say no assignments. Then I have to say just save. Save. Now let's open the table. Right, student table. You can see the Raju is there. That is the table, the record that I just added. Okay, I just added. Okay, right. So now you must have that confidence with you, right? Doing it with some purpose, not just thinking about exams. If you always if you always remember the exam, that is a ledak, අසනීපයක්. පාඩ හැමතිස්සෙම exam එක ගැන බය හිතනවා, right? So exam is not the big thing. Your life, proper life, right? So exam is nothing there, right? You will just go there and do it just like any other things. Okay, right. So now we are going to discuss few concepts related to the relationships theory part. Okay, so let's open the note. Right, now you know what is a relationship. It's a logical connection between 2 or more relations or tables. So then foreign key is a column in a table that is mapped to the primary key of the related table. So the department ID is mapped to the department ID table. So therefore it's a foreign key creating this relationship. Okay, right. Now when it comes to relationships, there are 2 concepts: multiplicity and degree. Again, right? Degree of a relationship, multiplicity of a relationship. So what is multiplicity or the cardinality of a relationship? Okay, so we discussed what is the cardinality of a relation. This is different. This is cardinality or the multiplicity of a relationship. So there can be 3 types of cardinalities. So multiplicities, that is one-to-one relationships, one-to-many relationships, many-to-many relationships. Only those 3 are there. Okay, I explain you that when we were doing the analysis. So therefore, I'm not going to explain it. I explain you and your mother is one-to-many relationship, mother and husband and wife, one-to-one relationship, right? And there are many-to-many relationships, like student can attend many courses, course can have many students, right? So those are many-to-many relationships. And I also explain you why there is nothing called many-to-one, because if you look at it from other side, you can take it as one-to-many. Okay, right. So now our task is, we must know if there is a one-to-one relationship, how to design that so that we can later develop it. If it is one-to-many, how to design that. If it is many-to-many, how to design that. Okay, so we'll start with one-to-many because that is the easiest one, and it is the most widely used one. Right, one-to-many. Right. So it's very easy. If you have one-to-many relationship, now first of all, you must know the definition of one-to-many relationship. We say that there's a one-to-many relationship between A and B if one instance of A is related with many instances of B, and one instance of B is related with one instance of A. So again, give the precise definition so that you don't have to go after anyone else, like politicians or anyone, or you don't have to send your parents like that, right? So just remember, if you have to do that, think, right? Be ashamed of yourself. Be ashamed of yourself. I'm that kind of a third-class person, right? Right. So how to create one-to-many relationship? It's very easy. Add the foreign key to the many side. That's it. Okay. How to create one-to-many relationship? Add a foreign key to the many side. That means you add a field to the many side and map it to the primary key of the one side. So then your one-to-many relationship is done. Right? Done. And that is what we did here. Right? That is what we did here. Why? Remember, we had I'm going back to the tools, database tools relationship. Now we had a one-to-many relationship, right? One student can do many assignments. One assignment is done by one student. It's not a group assignment. So therefore it's one-to-many. Let me draw it a little bit bigger. So I'm doing this very slowly because this is critical for you, either second paper structured or second paper essay, and also plenty of MCQs. Right. So this is one-to-many relationship. So therefore, how do you create a one-to-many relationship? Add the foreign key to the many side. So therefore, this many side is assignment. So therefore, what I did, I added a field called student ID here, and I mapped to the primary key of this one. So therefore, foreign key is in which side? In one-to-many relationship, many side. Right? It's in the many side, not in the one side. Right? Not in the one side. So that's it. So if you see any other relationship, and if you are very sure that it's one-to-many, make sure you add the foreign key to the many side. Right? Don't do any random things or blah blah blah. Right? Do something with specific rules in your mind. Okay, right? So that's it. So now we have already done a one-to-many relationship. Because we have one-to-many relationship, student can do many assignments. One assignment is done by only one student. Right, now let's see how to do one-to-one relationship. If I have one-to-one relationship, how to model that? It is somewhat rare, but yes, right? Husband and wife, country and president. Right? Country and what is the definition of one-to-one relationship between A and B? One instance of A is related with one instance of B, and one instance of B is related with one instance of A. One husband can have one wife, and one wife is related to one husband. One country can have one national anthem or president. One president is ruling one country. Assume there's no president who is supposed to rule more than one country. Assuming, okay. Right. How to create that relationship? So there are two different ways. Okay. Two different ways. So the one approach is add a foreign key. Of course, you have to add a foreign key, right? You have to add a foreign key. Without foreign key, you can't create relationship, right? So one approach is add a foreign key to one of the site. Right? That means you are introducing another field, and that is going to map to the primary key of the other table. Okay. So then someone will ask, which site are you going to add that field or the foreign key? Is it this side? Because now this is both are one. Now earlier it's very clear cut. You add the foreign key to the many side. Now if I say add the foreign key to the one side, maybe you will add here or you will be at here. Then you will feel like, okay, it doesn't matter. I can add it to any. Okay, I can add it to any. But there's another rule. You can't add it to any site. Of course, if both are strong entities, you can add it to any site. Both are strong. You know what is strong entities are, right? We discussed that. Those, we say that strong entity, it is related to our domain, our business. It's a main concept. Right? For a bank, account is a main concept. Customer is a main concept. For an education institute, student is a main concept. Assignment is a main concept. Right? But if it is between a strong entity and weak entity, now when you add in the foreign key, make sure that you add it to the weak entity, not the strong entity. Okay. Say this is the strong entity, this is the weak entity. Make sure you add the foreign key here, not here. Okay. If both are strong, you can add it to any side. Okay. Now I am going to introduce another concept to our database so that we can create a one-to-one relationship. So I'm going to introduce a concept called, say, already I have the student. Okay. Already I have student. How do you call it? Barakarya of English in guardian or something, right? Guardian or whatever name. So cover bar the student. So let's create another table. But again, that can be one. Oh, then again, guardian can have many students, right? So what I need is one-to-one relationship. Okay, there's a nice. Okay, again, it's not one-to-one relationship. Let's assume that student has one thing. What is that one thing? Can you think about something that student is going to have just one of those, and that one is going to map to one student? Just think about something. Just think about something. Maybe you may, your imagination is better than us because you are the next generation, right? School and student, no, right? Student can have many students. Sorry, school can have many students, and student is belong to one. So what I need is one-to-one, one-to-one. Okay, let's do something like this. Every student is given a locker. Of course, in Sri Lanka, I don't think that we are giving lockers, but in Western countries, they always give it because they don't like students to carry everything from home and bring it back again, right? So assume that there's a locker. Every student has one locker. One locker is belonging to one student. Okay. Now let's edit. Say create table. I'll save it so that it asks for the name. So it's a locker. Locker. Right. Then I'm going for the design view. I will call this locker ID. I will go for a number. Number, or I can even go for okay, because we are always going for number, I will go for number. Actually, local ID, I better go for a text like L1, L2, something like that. Okay, anyway, right, local ID, maybe maybe the location or something like that. Let's say short text, it's in building 1 or building 2 or whatever. Okay, let's say that's it, or maybe capacity or something. Okay, any other boolean field like whether the lock is available, not available, blah blah blah. Okay, right, I will just go for local ID and location. Okay, right, so now I'm going to save this, and I'm going to create a one-to-one relationship between locker and the student. Now we have to find out, are they both strong entities? If even though both are strong, at least you can find which one is more stronger. Definitely, you know that our main concept is not lockers, school. The main concept is student. Right? So those are not rocket science, right? To identify which one is strong, which one is weak. And you know that the main concept is students. Right? If it is a workshop or something, local, right? Not the student. But this is a school. So therefore, our strong entity is student. So therefore, we have to add the foreign key to the weak entity. So the weak entity is the local, right? So therefore, I'm going to add foreign key to the weak entity. Okay, foreign key to the weak entity. So therefore, I will close this. Yes. I'm going back to the local table design view. I will say student ID. And because it's a number from the other side, I will make it, okay, location, I will say short text. But student ID, I'm going to make it number. Okay. So actually, I'm expecting a question from you guys. I don't know whether you are going to ask that question or not. Okay. So you must have that critical thinking. Like I have told you, don't accept anything without a reason. Okay. Right. So now I have the student ID. Now I am going to create the primary key, because the primary foreign key is going. I'm going to add the. I have already added the field to the weak entity, which I am going to make it the foreign key now. So in order to make it foreign key, I have to do another one here. You have to make sure that it is a unique field. Right? You have to make sure that this field is unique field. Okay, unique field. So that is one way. I don't know whether Access is going to support this, but let's see. Okay. I have selected the student ID. Now I am going to come here and say here we have index. There's something called index. Yes, duplicate. Okay. Make sure there's a drop down here, right? You select yes, no duplicate. No duplicate means make it unique. That is how make it one-to-one. I just select yes and no duplicate. Okay. Yes, I just changed it earlier. Yes, duplicate. Okay. But now it is yes, no duplicate. That means I have made this unique. So make sure you do that if you want to make it one-to-one. Okay. Right. So now I am done with that. Now I am going to close this. And I am going to the database tools relationships. I am going to drag the locker. I am going to drag it to the student side, because the student is going to be connected with that one. Okay. Right. Now I am going to drag the student ID and put it into the student ID here, because this is the foreign key. Okay. So drag it and drop it. And it has already identified it is one-to-one, because I made that unique field. Otherwise, usually it will be identified as many-to-many if it is not a unique field. Because I have made it unique field, it has identified both the student ID, and make sure you click on the enforce referential integrity and create. Now you can see it is one to infinity side, one to many. This is one-to-one. Okay, one-to-one. So I'm done. So that is how you create a one-to-one relationship. How to create a one-to-one relationship? Add a field, add the foreign key to the weak entity. That is one way. There's another way. Okay, this is one way. Okay. No, you can't have text and number, because then the data can be conflicting, because in the if in the foreign key, if the text are allowed, someone will add something like hello. But now it is not going to be a valid primary key because the primary key is saying it's a number. So then you can't have hello. So therefore, in order to prevent those conflicting situations, usually database will force you to have the same type or compatible type. Otherwise, it will give you error because later you are in trouble. It doesn't make sense to have two different types, okay? Because both sides, if you are going to have the same values, why do you want to make it different types? It doesn't make sense. That is why database will ask you to force you to have either same type or compatible type means maybe the first one is short text, the other one is long text. That is fine. Okay, that is fine. Right. Right. Now I have one-to-one relationship as well. Right. That is between local and student. Right. Local and student. So if I go to the A-level exam hall also, this is how I am going to get one-to-one. Don't think that I am going to do the different things in different days. Mondays I do create one-to-one in this way. Right. Thursdays I do it. No. This is engineering. This is science. Right. But I told you that there's another way. But I told you that this is the only way. Have the foreign key in the many side. That is how you create one-to-many. But one-to-one, this is one way. There's another way. Right? There's another way. Okay. Right. So what is the other way? So other way is also not violating this approach. But now remember, I made at this field and make it unique. Right? At this field and make it unique. So sometimes what we can do is, since we already have a unique field here, we can make this primary key as well. We can make it because that student's local. That student's local. Okay. But then there's an issue also. That is, you can't have a local without student ID. So therefore, this is the better approach. This is the better approach. Right? Because this one can, if you have this approach, even when there's a student is not assigned, you can have local details. But if I go to the second approach, if there is no student assigned, that local details I will not be able to assign. So therefore, this is the better approach. Okay, this is the better approach. And this approach can be used when it is strong or weak. Strong or weak. Okay. So in this case, actually, local is not actually just a weak. It can have a strong presence as well because there can be a local without student. Okay. So therefore, this approach is better approach. But I told you there's another approach. In that approach, I am going to map this primary key to the other primary key. So then also, anyway, primary key is a unique, therefore it is going to make it one-to-one. But before moving to that, let's add some data and see whether now it's one-to-one. Okay, I'm going to save it. Now I have few students, right? 2022-001 student, 2022-002, blah, blah, blah. Now let's add a local. Let's say local 1. Say location is, let's say, B1, that is building 1. Say the student ID is 2022-002 student. Can I save it? Let's add another one. Local ID 2. It's also in building 1. So I have assigned it to, say, 2022-003 student. I should be able to save it. Now you can see one local is assigned to one student. One local I can't assign to many students. Now can I assign the same student different locals? Because we were able to do that. Right? Same student, different assignments. But now can I do that? Now let's see that possibility. Say 3. Say it is also in building 2. Can I assign it to the same student? Say 2022-003. So 2022-003 has already assigned a local. But the domain says this is one-to-one. So that is why we make that unique, foreign key unique. Now let's see whether we can save it. No. So that error says you are not supposed to do that because this is one-to-one. This is not one-to-many. Right? Your different assignments can be belonging to the same student ID, but not the different locus, because we enforce it as one-to-one. You can see that no, it is not allowed. Right? Because 2022-003 is already there, but see 2022-001 is not there. So I can assign this local to that student. Yes, that is safe. Now it confirms that this is one-to-one for the database, not one-to-many. Okay. So you can't have the same student ID in multiple rows, but in assignment table, we had that same student ID in multiple rows because that is one-to-many. Okay. Any questions? So what do you mean by last point? Because I'm looking at this after sometimes. So you have to specifically, if you specifically mention what is, which one you don't understand, I can explain it again. Second method still I didn't explain it. So obviously you can't understand it, right? Right. I'm going to explain it now. Okay. Right. So I just mentioned that there's a second method. Yes. Now I'm going to explain you the second method. Okay. Sorry for that. I didn't explain the second method. Okay. Right. So second method is also, it's better to know. Right. So second method is to explain the second method. I am going to create another table because I can't use both the methods for one particular one-to-one relationship. So therefore, I need another. I want to create another relationship with two things. Maybe again with student and another thing, but I want to. I am going to map it in a different the second approach. Okay. Say. Right. So let's assume that student can bring, right? Student can bring something, but he can bring only maximum of one, right? Maximum of one. What is that thing that you want to mention? Don't say smartphone, right? Because smartphones are not allowed. Okay. So let's say student can bring a bicycle. Okay, bicycle is student's belonging, but he can't bring more than one bicycle. Okay, but if there's a bicycle, there's a student. Right? If there's a bicycle, there's a student. Okay, so there can't be bicycles without student because it's student's bicycle that whenever he check in, coming to the school, we track that. Okay, this bicycle is that for that student's bicycle. We assume that every bicycle that is taken by the student, we have given a special number. Okay. Let's assume like that. Okay. Library members. You have to tell me what are the two entities. Library mem. So if it is a relationship, you have to tell me that between this entity and that entity. So if you tell me the two entities, I can say whether it's correct or not. Okay. You have to tell me the X and Y. Then I will say, no, it is not one-to-one. Oh, yes, it is one-to-one. Okay. Right. So now let's have that bicycle concept. Okay. So let's create a table. Save. Or let's call it vehicle. Okay. Vehicle. And let's go to the design. Right. Now this time I'm using the second approach because one vehicle belongs to one student. Student can have one vehicle. That is our assumption. So he is not supposed to take one more than one vehicle. Okay. So now I am not going to create a vehicle ID in this approach, right? I am going to use the same primary key ID of the student here also because this is student's vehicle. So therefore, I am going to introduce student ID. Student ID here also. And I'm going to make it again number and primary key, right? and maybe the color or something, color of the color or type of the bicycle or whatever. Okay, color and type and whatever. Okay, say type short text. Now I have not introduced a separate primary key for the vehicle, right? Say let's make it bicycle, right? Someone bicycle again. So I'm going to rename it as bicycle. Right, bicycle. Right. So now in my bicycle table, I have no something called bicycle ID or whatever. I have the student ID, color, and type. So I'm going to map now between the primary keys. That is the second way of creating one-to-one relationship. Okay. I don't know whether it is allowed in Access. I hope. Now I don't have to make it unique, because anyway primary keys are unique. Primary keys are by definition unique fields. Okay, so here you can see yes, no duplicate. Right? You can see by default it is yes, no duplicate. But if you add a normal field, it is either no or duplicate allowed. So that is why we had to make that foreign key no duplicate. Now this is anyway primary key. Now let's see whether we can create a one-to-one relationship. Go to the database tools relationships. Let's add the bicycle now, somewhere closer to the student, because I'm going to create the relationship between these two. Right, now I am going to add this. This is my main primary key. I can drag it this to this, so this to this, it doesn't matter. I will add, because this is my main primary key. I am adding that, dragging that, and I'm dropping it on the student ID field. Okay, and it has pick it as one-to-one, right? Student ID and student ID this time. And I'm saying enforce referential integrity, create. That is the second approach. Here the foreign key is this one. It is this relationship is between these two fields, but here the relationship is between this one and this one. And here the bicycle's primary key is also student ID, because we are keeping track of the bicycle using student ID, because it's only one. And always if there's a bicycle, there's a student. That is the assumption. That is what is meant by weak entity. It cannot exist on its own. Right? Weak. For example, you were weak when you were year 1, year 2. Someone has to carry you. So you were depending on someone else. Now this bicycle is depending on student. There's no concept called bicycle without a student. So therefore we just add the student ID itself. But here, though I call it locker as a weak entity, actually locker can exist, right? So therefore locker is more a strong entity as well. But that is, though it's a strong entity, this is the stronger guy. Compared to locker and student is the more stronger one. So therefore we add the foreign key to the weaker side. So here the foreign key is here, but its foreign key is also its primary key. Okay. All right. So those are the two ways. Those are the two ways you can create one-to-one relationships. Okay. Now let's add a data for that one also. Say I have a few students. So 2022-001, blah, blah, blah. Let's add a bicycle. Now this has to be valid student ID. 2022-001. Say color is red. And type is, let's say, sports. I don't know what other types are. Then I should be able to save it. You can see. Now let's add another one. 2022. Say there's no student with 005, right? 005. Or even there's nothing called 005. Say blue. And let's say regular. Now this must be giving me error, because there's no student ID 2022-005. So therefore definitely I must be getting error. You can see. You cannot add or change record, because a related record is required in the student table. There's no related record for the 2000 that 005. And also I can't have the same student ID, because this is one-to-one, and also this is the primary key field. So primary key field can't have the same values. primary key means unique field. So therefore, I am going to get errors again. Right? Again, so you have to have a valid value. At the same time, it must not be already there. So therefore, I will go for something like 003 because 003 is not already there, and it is also valid student ID. So that I must be able to save. Right. So now you know the both the ways where we can create one-to-one relationships, and there's only one way we can create one-to-many. That is adding the primary key for it give the many side. In one-to-one, you map between the primary keys, or you introduce a foreign key to the weaker entity or weaker side and make it unique and create the relationship. Any questions? Right. So we discuss how to make one-to-one, how to make one-to-many. So the third one is how to create many-to-many. Many-to-many. So when it comes to many-to-many, actually you can't create many-to-many as it is. As it is. So in designing, we have to break that many-to-many relationship into two one-to-many relationships. Two one-to-many relationships. And first we have to introduce another table, and it is going to be two one-to-many relationship where the many side is your new table. We call it the connecting table. Okay. So let's do that also. Let's introduce another concept to this one. So let's look at the relationships. Now I need something, I want to connect it to the student, but it must be many-to-many. Many-to-many, not just one-to-one. Right? Or one-to-many. It must be many-to-many. Okay, let's say we are keep tracking which students are involved in which sports. So student can involve many sports, and one sport is obviously done by many students, right? So there can be so many students involved in football or badminton, and of course one student can do both badminton and football, something like that. Okay, just to make simple. Okay, right. So let's first introduce that table. What is that table? Sport. Say new table. Let's save it. Sports. Always use singular for tables. Sport. It's a convention. Sport. I told you those things, right? Right. So let's say design view. Say sport ID. Let's go for number and S name, because name is reserved word. That's it. Long short text. Right. I'm done. Now there's student can do many sports. Sports can be done. A sport can be done by many students. It's a many-to-many. So what is the solution? We have to introduce another table, and it must be a connect. We call it the connecting table. Okay. So usually you can give it any name. You can give it any name, but as a convention, remember, if people are following conventions, everyone's life is easy. Right? Everyone's life is easy. Right? So therefore, we are following the convention because we are responsible people. Right? So I will combine the name student, and so let's add the other table also. Close and get it. Where is that? Okay, sport is there. I will make assignment somewhere here. Sport is there. Now I am going to create the connecting table and make it as two one-to-many. One-to-many, one-to-many. Many side is a connecting table. So usually what I do is, or most of the software developers do is, combine that table name, you take it as combining these two. But that is not a must. Right? I will call it student sport. Then someone who looking at the table name, they know that this is a connecting table. Okay. Right. So let's create that. Yes. Create table, save, let's say student sport. Right. So here, let's go to the design view. Now we are going to introduce a composite primary key. So one, because it's one to many, you need to have foreign key for the many side. Many side is the connecting table. So one, it's going to connect to the student. Therefore, I'm going to add student ID. And also it is going to be the many side of the with relationship with the sport. Therefore, I'm going to add sport ID also. Sport ID also. Both I'm going to say number because student ID is a number, sport ID is a number. And if you want, you can have any other fields. And this is very important. The combination must be the primary key, not sync, because you can have same student doing different sports. So therefore, select both. Select this, click the control button, keep control button click and select the other one. Now both are selected. I'm still having control button. Now right click and say primary key. Now you can see both are having the key field. Otherwise, when you make one other one primary key, the previous one lose it. So now it's a composite primary key. Now I told you there's something called composite primary keys. This is where you have the composite primary keys. Okay. If you want, you can have any other things like that also. For example, let's say which date that particular student started that sport. We just want to keep track of that. Right? Maybe that student has started on cricket that particular day. Okay. Right. So let's say date started. And I'm going for number. And that is a normal field. Date time. Right. Now save it. Now I have my connecting table. Okay. And some meaningful field as well. Now I'm going to the database tools, relationships. I have closed all the tables. I'm adding this student sport table. So now I am going to create two one-to-many relations because there's no way you create many-to-many relationship in databases. Right now, this student ID is this student ID. So therefore, I'm dragging this and putting it there. There will be one-to-many relationship. Yes, enforced referential integrity. And this sport ID, I'm putting it to the sport ID. Enforced referential integrity. Done. So that is how you create many-to-many relationships. Right. So that is how you create many-to-many relationships. Okay. Right. We are done. So let's close it. So there's no way you create the many-to-many relationship directly. You always have to introduce a connecting table and model it as two one-to-many relationship where the many side is your connecting table and you have composite primary key where each field is a foreign key to the relevant table as well. So this is a foreign key to this table. This is a foreign key to this table. At the same time, combination is the primary key of this table. Okay. Right. So let's add some data. So let's add some sports. Say sport ID, say 1, sport name football, say sport ID 2, say badminton. Right, we already have some students. Okay. So therefore I can now add few records to the student sport. Right. So there's a student ID 2022 001. Say that student is doing football. And date started, I'm just adding random date. Okay. Why is that? Oh, sport table. Maybe I have not saved it. Yes, I have not saved it. Now I have saved it. Now I should be able to save this also. Right. Now let's say the same student, right? Same student, because this many, he may be doing the football as well. That is possible. Say it's a different student now because we have only two sports. 2022 001 3 students, he is doing, assume port ID 2. Right? Maybe the same student is doing port ID 1 as well. Maybe the other student is also doing one sport, that is 2 student. He is doing sport 2. Like that. So that is how you do it. Save. Right. Now I am going to delete these forms because we have added few more tables. Now I am going to generate forms for each and every table. I am selecting one table, go to create form, save, same name as table, close. Then second one, create form, close, yes, same name as table, create form, save, close, sport, form, save, student, form, close. Okay. Create forms. Right. You have to close it and take it, otherwise you will not be able to see the data properly. Right now, look at something like, say, student. Right. So these are the student details. Okay. So maybe the assignment details, bicycle, right? Locker details, right? Student sport. Now, since there are so many tables, now the database is not generating those other forms or that combination. Only the sport table they have added. This sport is done by many students. So likewise, if you want, you can have the student table also. These sports are done by the student. Or okay, something like that. Okay, so these assignments have been given submitted by students, so those kind of things can be there, but when it is too complicated, your tool is not generating those things because it's ambiguous. It doesn't know whether I should generate it for that one or this one. But usually we are not relying on these things. We will do it by ourselves as software developers. So therefore, we can decide on how are we going to design the UI. But anyway, that is not part of your syllabus. But now you can see once you do the designing, right, you must feel like it's very strong. We can handle any situation, right? We can enter any data as long as your relationship is stick to these things. If all of a sudden one-to-one become one-to-many, of course, then it is not going to work because you promised that it is a one-to-one. If one student want to bring more than two bicycles for the school now, yes, now we are in trouble because you told us that it's one-to-one. That is why we design it like that. If the requirements change, we have to redesign the database. Okay. So, but for this requirement, as long as requirement is this, our database design is now done. It's going to cater your requirement. Okay. Right. So I will be posting this database to your WhatsApp group, but don't just open it and play. First, you do it. In case you have issues, open my database. I don't know whether you will be able to open it because it's the latest version. Maybe, right? But don't rely on me because you always have the recordings also. Right? So you can have a look at the recordings and figure it out what is the issue. Okay. Right. We stop at this point. Right? So now design part is not yet over. We have to do the normalization. Then the design is over. Then we have to do the SQL. Then your database subject is over. Okay. We stop at this point. Right? Thank you.